Okay, good afternoon, students. I'm excited to be creating our symmetrical paper craft lesson today. Remembering that when we create our design, hopefully it'll be a reminder to us that we want to be a reflection of God's beauty and His glory and His love on heaven or on earth as it is in heaven. So as we create this design today, you're going to need a couple supplies. I'd love for you to have 4 sheets of paper. Preferably in different colors. Although if all you have is just plain printer paper, that'll work fine too. We'll come up with a solution if you don't have any colored paper in your home. We can still make the project work and look really cool. So have those 4 sheets. In addition, you're going to need a pencil with an eraser and a glue stick and some scissors. So hopefully we can come up with some projects with minimal supplies. The first thing what we're going to do, I'll show you from another project that I did, is choose what color you want for your background sheet. This is where we're going to be gluing everything else. And then I'm going to lead you step by step in creating a background layer. It's going to be the biggest, the most amount of color. And then we're going to do a middle ground layer that's going to sit in the middle. And then a foreground or a top layer that will end up gluing together at some point. So let me lead you step by step on how we're going to get all this cool replication in our piece. For my project today, I'm going to use my black background. And I think for my first layer, I'm going to go ahead and use some maroon, some legacy colors. First thing I want you to do is to take your paper and fold it hot dog style. So if you can look for those corners from edge to edge, press down and get a good crease. And then we're going to fold it again into fourths. So if we would go from one edge up to the top, fold that in place like so. Okay. Now what I want you looking for is you can see that when we fold this, some of the edges are open and some of the edges are what I call closed. See how I can't put my finger in there? But on here, this is an open edge. And also down here, I have open where I can see all 4 parts of the paper. What we want to do to make sure that when we cut it, it sticks together and doesn't fall into a million pieces is we want to draw a line from the top right-hand corner on the open side and do our design until it ends on the other open side. And we want to keep these folded edges intact. So if you could fold your paper, make sure you have the open on the right-hand side and on the bottom, and then draw a line for your base design from that top corner. I'm doing something very simple, and I'm just going to remove a little bit of paper here because I want to have a lot of color. So again, from the top right-hand corner, and let's do it down to the bottom left-hand corner for a big shape. And you're going to do whatever kind of style you like, but keep this first layer relatively simple. It's just kind of going to be the frame for your artwork, if you will, within the background. Now, I always recommend with cutting a few things. One, this right hand with the scissors, or if you're lefty, your left hand holding the scissors, isn't doing most of the work. It's not really supposed to twist its arm. What I'd love you to do is to practice with the opposite hand that's holding the paper, pivoting the paper as this blade's closing. So when I'm cutting here, this hand, the opposite hand, is doing all the work on the turning, and this hand's just focusing on closing slowly. So that's one thing. Let's open it up. Here's the fun part, is the reveal to see what your shape looks like, almost like when we made paper snowflakes. I love that. That looks great. Now for our second layer, we want to now get a little bit smaller. I'm thinking with the colors that I have, I'm going to use this brighter peach for my next layer. Otherwise, it might be hard to see my other dark green. So we're going to do the same method again. And if you ever need to pause the video, if Mrs. Harris is going too fast, feel free to just press pause. We'll fold this second layer hot dog style. And then again, use the table. Don't need to be up here in the air making things hard for yourself. I like this because I can use my opposite left hand to hold it down, match my corners, and then I can swoosh it down. And even if your fold's not perfect, it's not going to make too much of a difference. Okay, the cardstock's a little bit harder to work with. So let's look for our open edges and our closed edges now. Okay. This for sure is an open edge. I can see 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces of paper. Oh, and there's my other open edge with 4 pieces that I can count. 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's draw this design as well from the top right-hand corner, and we'll end somewhere over here. But for this design, I want to cut out a little bit more paper than I did last time. And then this time I'm going to try something boxy or more masculine. So let's come here. I'm going to do some really simple shapes. And I want to do some that are tall, maybe some that are shorter. Do a nice diagonal. Maybe I'll do another smaller box. And if it's hard for you to replicate, you can always turn this way for your design too. And maybe I come in and do one more diagonal. And I don't want it to end that long, but I like how it's coming out far from the paper and then in and then deeper in. So we want to have some differences where it's not all so even. And I'll do a straight flat bottom here. Now we're going to cut this edge. Practice again. Use your thumb and get your thumb as close to the area where you're cutting as possible. Students that get frustrated with cutting are usually holding it away from the scissors so far that when they cut, the paper's flopping on them. So I think it's better to use your opposite hand and get as close as you can and be a support to that paper so it's not wiggling around on you. Almost like when you're doing handwriting, you got to use your opposite hand to hold the paper still. We're going to do the same with our cutting. So I like to rotate all the way. And if this is frustrating, ask yourself something. One, is the paper too thick? And that's what's causing the trouble, because I want this to be fun for you. If the paper is too thick, ask mom and dad if you can use a thinner paper. If it's too hard for you to get around your shapes, you might want to consider getting another piece of paper and making your shapes less complicated. That's another way to relieve the frustration. Okay, so let's pivot again. Straight edge. Sometimes I'll just cut the whole paper off to get it out of my way, and then I can do the rest. Okay, let's clear off our workspace. Oh, I love this. Masculine, angles, really strong. I like that. So there's going to be my middle ground layer. And let's do our last one, our top layer. So I'm going to do the same method. If you need to pause and catch up, feel free. Now, do I have to do hot dog folding first, or can I try this, folding the paper in half? So it doesn't really matter which way we go about it. As long as we fold and fold again, we're still going to get that rectangle folded into fourths. Okay, so before we begin, look for our closed edges and our open edges. So would this be correct to have this up on top? No, because we got 4 open edges. Looks like I need to get my tag off my paper. So I don't want this on the open part. I'd like you to have the closed one on the top and the closed here on the spine, almost like you're reading a book, right? Like you could go like this and open the book. So let's do for the last layer. I'm going to have to switch to a Sharpie so you can see on the video. This last one, I'm going to change and do a real big contrast. This was really hard lines masculine. I'm going to do much curvier on this. Starting in the top right, I'm going to do something soft. And I'm going to go some short designs. And then maybe come in for something skinnier and longer. And a swoosh. Okay, so as long as I start in the upper corner and end somewhere down here, we should be good. Let's see what happens when I cut this curvy design out. I'm going to start here again. I'm putting my thumb to support the paper and get as close to my hand as possible. And say like you drew the design. I drew this. I don't know that I really like that. So I might even just decide that I'm going to cut it off and change my mind as I'm cutting. You can do that as well. Swoop. Here where my design looked a little uneven, I can correct that. So even if my line is there, if I want to fix it, I may. I'm going to soften this curve. Again, I'm always using this hand to really pivot. I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but this hand is pulling the paper this way rather than my right hand doing the work. Let's try to get a big extreme curve on this. Top part reminds me of raindrops. Okay. Now, let's open it up. Cool. I've got the vertical symmetry here and a horizontal symmetry also. Now, I like it, but I feel like it's still really heavy. So what you can do as a fun technique is if you want to refold your shape back together again, you could come and remove even more space if you like. Let me explain what I mean by that. So if I was to take and do a parallel edge here, I could carve off some extra shapes. Maybe I'm going to even remove this right here and make another soft curve. So if your top layer, which is supposed to be the thinnest, looks too heavy, I can always come in, see if I can make a parallel curve inside here. This is kind of fun. So as long as you have something attaching these spaces, it shouldn't all fall apart. Although if it does, and things do fall apart, you can use these pieces. That doesn't necessarily mean they're trash. Maybe we want to use them somewhere else in our project as well. So let's see what we have to play with here. I like that much better with the little peek-through holes that we created. I love that circle in the middle. That's fun. Now from here, before I glue anything down, it's okay to be critical of your work a little bit and see if there's anything you'd want to change. So I could maybe add some cutouts to my background layer, or even if I think my peach layer needs some change up here. This looks a little blocky, so I think I'm going to fold it again and again and do one last cutout here. Again, as long as I don't cut the paper completely apart, I can make this even thinner. I like that better. So we can continue to make those adjustments as you like. Okay. For gluing it down, make sure you use the background sheet of paper to protect Mom and Dad's table from getting glue all over it. I'm also going to look at these and see if I want to include these anywhere. Let's see, I could use them on the side, or I could do this. That could be kind of cool to make a little bit of asymmetry. So again, you can use the pieces that you were left over for any other design work you like. So we'll always start gluing our background layer first. Open up your glue stick so it's not too much peeking out. I like to go around my edges. And then fill in quickly the center. If we take too long going around painstakingly, then this will dry by the time you get glue here, and then something won't stick. Now before you just push it down on the paper, make sure it's not crooked. Make sure it's not coming off the edge unless you like it off the edge on purpose. I'm going to try to keep mine so that I have the even amount of space at the bottom and the top and the right on the left side before I press. And then I'll start in the middle and I'll get my air bubbles out. They're kind of spreading from the center out like so. Okay. I'm going to do my heavy layer. And again, you can make last minute changes. If anything that you want to add, you may. So let's see what happens if I thin this out. The worst that can happen is you don't like the design and you get another piece of paper. All right, I like that better. So now I'm going to add some glue to this edge. Now, note one thing. When you have shapes like this, if you try to pull in with your glue, you might rip your paper or bend it or warp it. So I always encourage students to take the glue stick and run the glue stick from the center line out. And again, use this. It's okay if you have your glue stick and it gets on your artwork. We don't want it on Mom and Dad's table. All right. And if it gets little thick spots, try to move it down somewhere else and thin it out like that. Okay. Now let's take a look. This is a little bit trickier because I went all the way down to the paper. Okay. And for our last layer, this is for sure the hardest part to glue on. I bet you can imagine why, because we have all these little edges. So if you still have pencil marks, you can always take this time to erase anything that you don't want to see on your final project. And we'll glue it all down. So let me fast forward this. Okay. And what I love about this project is everyone looks so unique and different. So it's going to be fun to have you guys upload your work and maybe you guys can see how everyone else's designs turned out for today's project, because each one's going to be quite unique. If you had white paper, I just wanted to mention, say like you just had the copy paper and let's problem solve some things we could do. So if we were to cut out our background layers like so, you could use a crayon if you wanted to create some different layers. So here I just had white copy paper. So we could do a white background layer and a middle ground layer and a top layer. Now I think it looks beautiful, even just all white, especially if you're creating a contrast with your curves and shapes and designs and not just the paper. But if you still wanted to go further than that, what you could do is take some type of marker or pencil or colored pencil, and you could even draw designs that distinguish one layer from another. So meaning, if I took my Sharpie and I wanted to draw curves around this edge and just make certain things stand out in your project, I could outline them. I could do some really cool dot patterns. So you're welcome to experiment. You could color the different layers, whatever you like. So even if you don't have construction paper, even just using some white paper could end up being something really cool. You could draw shapes, and if you had the colored paper, you could add another layer of complexity to your artwork this way too. And just put repeating patterns inside, start to join them together. So the sky's the limit. I can't wait to see all the fun ideas that you guys have. Maybe you'll even have words with mirror images. So hopefully I'll see you guys soon. Hope you enjoyed today's project. And again, I pray that you have a fun time creating. Love you all so much. Take care.